Can gluten give you headaches? That is a phenomenal question. If you suffer with headaches that just don't seem to go away like most would, other than by giving yourself more time, then you may have been wondering this very question. If that sounds like you, then you are in the right place. I'm here to answer that question in today's video, and trust me, I know this one personally. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Dr. Kelly Shockley, Doctor of Cause Chiropractic, board certified in sports medicine and specialized in clinical nutrition. In this video, we're going to be going over the hidden connection between migraines and gluten. Honestly, it's one that more people need to know about. Then we'll cover the most effective way to know if your headaches or migraines are actually coming from gluten. It's free and doesn't involve any testing. And finally, I will be sharing with you the places you're being exposed to gluten without even knowing it. Plus, we're going to go over some alternative names that are code for gluten. Let's dive on in. Now let's get into the hidden connection between migraines, headaches, and gluten. Now, in order to explain this one, we need to delve into something you may have heard but aren't completely familiar about. It is known as the brain-gut connection. Now, what we've discovered over the last 5 years is that really what happens in the gut happens in the brain and vice versa. There is no other place on the body that has more connections between itself and the brain as the gut does with the brain. They have gone as far as to calling the gut the second brain of the body. Now, here's how this relates to could your migraines or your headaches be triggered from gluten. It has to do with the function of your gut. Because you see, the gut is obviously where you're putting your food, and the food gets digested throughout the whole entire digestive system as long as things are working correctly. What we know now is there are at least 80%, and I honestly think the number is higher, of Americans that are dealing with guts that are leaking or allowing things into the bloodstream that should not be there. So let's talk about how this relates to gluten. Now, if there's actually a couple of different camps when it comes to gluten. Part of what is being discussed is that the gluten-containing grains that we use in America have been altered so much that our body doesn't actually have a digestive enzyme to recognize fully what they are. Now, if that was true and you had a digestive system that was working perfectly, there wouldn't be an issue because your body would just pass that substance right on out. But we don't see that happening, right? We see people that, like I said, have guts that are allowing things into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there. So if this partially digested or maybe not even digested gluten-containing grain goes into the gut and the gut is not intact and it allows things into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there, then the chances are that this gluten-containing conglomerate of whatever gets into the bloodstream. And honestly, even if it hadn't been altered at all, it still doesn't belong in the bloodstream. When it comes to our food, the only things that should be going into the bloodstream from our food are full broken down carbohydrates, which are sugars, completely broken down proteins, which are amino acids, and completely broken down fat, which are fatty acids. And then all of our vitamins and our minerals are other nutrients. So gluten-containing grains are not allowed into the blood. But let's just say they make it there. Well, the immune system sits right behind the digestive system in the blood, looking to see who is sneaking past our digestive system. And when they see this gluten-containing conglomerate, they recognize it as a foreign invader. And now the immune system sets off a reaction. We're going to come back to this, but let me give you the other side of the camp when it comes to gluten-containing products here in the US. The other camp believes that part of what's happening is that we've altered things in the United States to make them what we call Roundup ready, right? Ultimately, what that means is that farmers can use more pesticide, which is what Roundup is, to kill the pests, but the crop doesn't actually die as a result of using it. And honestly, the way this was supposed to work was that farmers were able to use less because they were making crops that were pest resistant. It's not what's going on, though. We in America, our crops are being just poured over with pesticide compared to prior GMO days. So there's this other camp that believes that it's not necessarily the gluten that's causing the reaction in people, but the pesticide that they're ingesting as a result of consuming those types of foods. So same scenario. Whether you've got a foreign gluten, we don't understand what this is, that enters into the bloodstream, or you have the pesticide be able to pass through and make it into the bloodstream, your immune system is going to respond to both the same way. It's going to set out an alert. This is a foreign invader. It is not something that belongs in your bloodstream. But here is how this works. What we know is this immune reaction can go anywhere in the body. We had no idea until like the past handful of years that this is something that was actually possible. And what we've realized is that gluten, for whatever reason, or maybe it's pesticides, has a high affinity for sending the immune system to the nervous system. And that's where the immune reaction actually occurs. And ultimately what that means is you don't end up with classic digestive problems because the immune reaction is not happening there locally in the gut. If it goes to the brain, you get to deal with all kinds of brain types of symptoms. Well, guess what a headache actually is, or a migraine even? It is a brain health type of a symptom. So if that immune response is happening in the nervous system, headaches are one of the things that you could experience. And that's kind of the nitty-gritty of how all of this works. Honestly, more in depth than that is not necessary. You just need to understand that what you're putting into your mouth does not just have the ability to cause digestive issues. It depends on where the immune system chooses to respond to whatever went wrong within the digestive system. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm super curious. Did you realize that that was part of this connection between gluten and headaches, brain and digestive system? Just let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear your feedback and your thoughts on this. I do read every single comment, so I appreciate you putting them there. Awesome. Let's get into what is the most effective way to know if gluten is the cause behind your headaches or your migraines. It's not a test. I mean, you can do food sensitivity types of tests, but the challenge is those tests are not always the most accurate. It depends on the company you're going to use. There's a bazillion of them out there anymore, and not all of them are created the same way. They're not all looking through the same avenue within the immune system, which there's about 4 different pathways, and then there's a complement system. So there's 5 different ways that they could ask this particular question and see what your response is. Also, allergies don't test the same way that sensitivities do. Now, most of us understand if we have an allergy because they give you more of an immediate reaction versus if it's a sensitivity, it's more of a delayed response. However, people who have wheat allergies don't necessarily respond in the same way that somebody who has like a shellfish or a peanut allergy would. So it all gets very confusing. And the point is, with the type of testing you could have done, it's really hard to know if it's completely accurate or, false positive, false negatives. We don't really know. Okay. There's not a standard throughout the industry of how you evaluate this. And maybe you went to the point of having testing done to see if you had celiac disease, which is obviously a gluten intolerance at its most severe level. They are saying it's more of an autoimmune type of a response that's occurring in the body. The only way to do that is to actually biopsy the small intestine, which maybe you've been concerned that this is an issue, but I don't know about you, that doesn't sound like the most exciting way to go about figuring it out. There is a lab out here that I've used in the past that has a different type of technology that can ask that type of a question through your blood, that they get more accurate results, but it's still not one that is 100% accurate. So here's the thing. How is the best way to know if this is what's triggering your headaches or not? It's honestly by eliminating it from your diet. And I'm going to get into how do you know where you're being exposed besides the obvious of breads and crackers and pastry type products. But that is the key. And part of what will happen as you eliminate gluten from your diet is you're allowing your body to start to heal and recover. Your threshold ends up increasing, and ultimately what happens is the ability for your body to give you a warning signal that something wrong went on if you become exposed to gluten again down the road. You do have the potential for having a more immediate response at that point in time. And sometimes you get to experience a more severe symptom. However, I know that sounds awful, but this is the most foolproof way to figure this out. Normally, if you remove gluten, like cut it out everywhere you know you're being exposed for even just a couple of weeks, and then you have a piece of bread or something you know that has significant amount of gluten in it, if within the next 48, 72 hours you end up with a headache, then you've figured out exactly one of the aspects of what's contributing to your headaches. Okay, I personally get migraine-like headaches if I consume gluten. I figured this out back when I was 15 years old and first tested intolerant to gluten. I do not have celiac, but I am definitely gluten intolerant. Now, I haven't gone abroad like some of my patients have and tested the theory out of, is it really gluten, or is it what we're growing here in the US, or the amount of pesticides? Because what I can tell you is the patients who are gluten intolerant can travel to Europe and eat pastry products and gluten-containing goods from, say, France, and not have any issues. But they don't use the same grains we do. They don't use the amount of pesticides that we do. So there's a few variables as to why that may be the case. But for me personally, gluten-wise, I don't necessarily end up with digestive problems at all. I will get brain fog and I get like a migraine-like headache. And it is not a migraine headache that responds to anything that I would usually take, like curcumin or turmeric or omega-3 fatty acids. Or if it's so bad, the only over-the-counter that I will honestly reach if I absolutely have to is Excedrin. Normally, that cuts the edge off of a headache for me and I can function. If it's gluten-related, that doesn't do anything, and it's more of digestive enzymes, and I can work this through my system as fast as possible and try not to be exposed again. So that is honestly the most foolproof way to figure it out. And it doesn't cost anything. You can start right away and you will have your answer within a week to 2 weeks, in all honesty. And then you'll know. And if it really has to do with the amount of pesticide that we're being exposed to, nobody really should be eating the gluten-containing stuff anyway. It's not as healthy as what we've been led to believe. And you are actually going to be healthier as a result of removing it from your life. Okay, so you can do it. I promise. Done it, like I said, since I was 15. There's plenty of other things to be eating out there, and we're going to get into some of that here in a moment. But before I get into the places you're being exposed to gluten and not necessarily knowing it, I just want to take a moment and remind you to click that subscribe button right down below, turn the notifications on, and hey, while you're down there, if you're enjoying this video, give me a nice thumbs up, a like, and greatly appreciate that. You guys, I am regularly producing videos. They come out every single week, multiple times a week, and it's all about gut health and brain health and ultimately how to take back control of your health so you can live the highest quality of life that's possible while you're here, because that's what it's all about. So again, just remember, click the subscribe button, turn the notifications on, and give me a big thumbs up if I'm doing a good job for you. Thanks so much. So what are the places you're being exposed to gluten and you may not necessarily even know it? Let's delve on in. There's actually quite a big list here for you. So slow down the video if you need to, take notes if you need to. I actually have an easier way to figure this out coming up right after this, so stay tuned for that. But let me give you some of the usual places. Some of the names that are grains that also have gluten exposure or gluten containing, grains that they are. So let me just share with you what those include. So for this first category, these are the following grains and starches actually contain gluten. So you want to avoid these as well. Obviously wheat and wheat germ, but even rye, barley, bulgur, couscous, farina, gram flour, kamut, semolina, spelt, and triticale, I think is how you pronounce the last one. Most of these you're going to find in your baked goods, okay? So your breads, crackers, sometimes your pastas as well. So just start looking at your ingredients. Now the next set of foods are foods that get exposed to gluten. They might contain gluten, but you're not necessarily going to have any awareness of these because they're not your classic breads and pastas and crackers. So just bear with me. There's a good list here. But these are the foods that you should have some heightened awareness around or find just alternatives. Or if you're out eating, make sure you ask if they have a gluten-free version. That's another way to steer clear. Malt flavoring, soups, commercial bouillons and broths, so make stuff at home if you have the ability to do that. It's so much better for you anyway. Cold cuts, so your lunch meats. French fries, believe it or not, they often dust them before they freeze them. Processed cheese like Velveeta, mayonnaise, ketchup, malt vinegar, soy sauce and teriyaki sauces, salad dressings, imitation crab meat, imitation bacon, egg substitutes, tabbouleh, sausage, non-dairy creamer, anything fried, gravy, of course, because they use flour as the thickener, marinades, canned baked beans, cereals, commercially produced chocolate milk, anything that's been breaded, fruit fillings and puddings, hot dogs, ice cream, root beer, energy bars, trail mix, syrups, wheatgrass instant hot drinks, flavored coffees and teas, blue cheese, vodka, wine coolers, meatballs, meatloaf, communion wafers, veggie burgers, roasted nuts, beer, oats, unless they specify that they're gluten-free. Part of it is because oats are manufactured in the same facility that wheat is, so they can have cross-contamination. So if you're eating oats, make sure it specifies that they're gluten-free. And oat bran as well. You want to only use it if it's been certified gluten-free. Now, I know that's a huge list, but who would have thought ketchup actually could contain gluten? I mean, why are they putting it in everything? Partly because it works as a binder, not necessarily for ketchup, but it's a binder. So you'll find it in really odd places. And speaking of odd places, some of the miscellaneous places you may actually find gluten are shampoos and conditioners, cosmetics, lipstick and lip balm, Play-Doh, different medications even, non-self-adhesive stamps and envelopes, and certain vitamins and supplements. So make sure you're checking labels as much as you possibly can. Now I got to share with you the list of names that are code for gluten. Dextrin, fermented grain extract. Some of these I can't even pronounce very well. So Hortium vulgare and Hortium hydrolyzed malt extract, hydrolyzed vegetable protein, maltodextrin. Sometimes tocopherol and vitamin E actually mean wheat or gluten. Yeast extract, natural flavoring, brown rice syrup, modified food starch, hydrolyzed soy protein, and caramel color, as it's frequently made from barley. Now, I know that list is ginormous, so start with the most obvious offenders first, and then you can start delving in. And honestly, easier way to go about this is avoid foods that come already packaged for you, that have already been prepared for you, because that's where you're going to run into trouble most frequently. Now, if you're sitting there going holy cow, that's a ginormous list. How in the world am I supposed to eat and not be, triggered by gluten when there's all of these different places that I wouldn't have even known to have looked into? Don't fret. I've got you. If you click on the description that's right below this video, click on it so it expands. Scroll down. You will see a 7-day Eat Your Way to Better brain health meal plan. This really just sets the stage for how should you be eating to help improve gut health, brain health, and not be exposed to anything that contains gluten that would trigger a migraine or a headache for you ever again. It's super easy to follow. This is a meal plan that was designed for people who don't have time to cook on a regular basis or simply don't want to live life in the kitchen. I don't want to, so I'm the one who created this. It is easy. And then I've also included your grocery list and then all of the recipes, which are tasty, delicious, kid approved, not many ingredients, and don't take all the time in the world to actually prepare. So again, go down below this video into the description. Click on it so it expands out and look for the 7-day Eat Your Way to Better brain health meal plan, and you will be well on your way to living a healthier life and being migraine and headache free, which who doesn't want that? I mean, I wouldn't wish them on my worst enemy. They're awful. So click on that. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you on a future episode. God bless.